Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler.
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
And you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. Welcome back to Behind the Sign. We're excited to have our next guest here. This is Mr. Greg Powers. Greg, welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank
Great
you for
to be
coming.
on this.
Yeah, this is exciting. Is this your first podcast?
Yes, it is.
Oh, even better.
Look
right?
at that.
And,
It was my first podcast, too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Never had done one before.
Yeah,
So
that's good. We're breaking in all the newbies. So the reason we wanted you to come on the show today is because obviously we're interested in sort of your take on what it's like to be a real estate agent. And we found it to be really helpful to find out like what got everybody into real estate. So we'd love to know what you did before real estate, how you found yourself getting into real estate, and what was sort of like the big, proponent that kept you in it and kept you going. And then kind of the focus being on, we'd like to focus on the client handling, right? Like how do you handle clients so that they don't run amok or, they stop listening to you or any of the things that you've sort of kind of gone through and realized, oh, whoops, that was a mistake. I'm going to better myself this time, and sort of how you've grown as an agent.
Okay. How I got into real estate's an easy story. Most of my professional life, I was a rare book dealer. Had my own business, traveled around the country doing shows, put out catalogs, and it was a fantastic way to make a living, but it was a tough way to make a living. And I never got rich at it. I was able to support my family. But I remember sitting on my couch one day and thinking, I need to get rich. How am I going to do that?
It's a good aspiration. Yeah.
And, a lot of my friends in college had been interested in real estate, and I was not about business. I was all about poetry and art and stuff then. So I paid no attention. But I realized, well, that's how you make money. That's how people get rich, is in real estate. So went out and got my license. I did it for 2 years. I was with a RE/MAX group in Manchester, and I did pretty well, but I didn't get rich. And I started to miss my previous profession of book selling. So I got out of real estate after 2 years, right before the big crash. My timing was excellent.
Wow.
Congratulations, you win.
Thank you.
And I ended up opening a used bookstore, which was part of a grand plan in Manchester down on Depot Street behind Murphy's Tap Room. And that didn't last very long. And I remember I started to think about investing in real estate. And so John Roy, who was an agent with Peliquin for many years, moved over to Keller Williams Metropolitan, and I reached out to him to go see, a few properties. And he said, you really should get back into this business. And after the bookstore closed, I went to work for Fidelity Investments just as a customer service representative. I was on the phones all day long.
That's fun.
What?
That's fun.
No, it was not fun. My day was measured by the minute. You took your break at this time, and if you were 3 minutes late, you got dinged. And a few things happened there, and I realized I am not going to do this. So I gave my notice. I went back, talked to Mark Mulcahy, got my license again because I had let it lapse, and came to KW Metropolitan, and the rest is history.
So what year was that you came here?
2014.
Okay. So 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Happy 10
Yeah.
years.
Hey,
10-year
there you go.
anniversary.
Yeah.
Who knew?
Right. When did you start? Was it November 15th?
November something.
Yeah, really?
Oh,
wow.
my goodness. And
That's
it is
awesome.
I'll have to go
November
back and
15th.
look.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Well, happy 10-year anniversary with
Thank you
Keller
very much.
Williams.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You didn't even know this was your 10-year anniversary episode.
So going back, so that the first 2 years that you started, you said you didn't get rich. Was it enough to sort of support yourself? What were the things that were preventing you from, I guess, achieving that initial expectation of being able to be, highly lucrative?
Me. As Taylor Swift said, I'm the problem. I've always been an introvert. Getting into real estate, I don't know how I did it or why I did it, because, reaching out to people was not my thing. And at RE/MAX, they didn't really offer a lot of training. They told you how to interpret the purchase and sale agreement and things like that. So it wasn't, and it wasn't a complete leap for me. I knew I have to do the work to make the money, but
Right.
I mean, I wasn't that good at doing the work and reaching out. When I came to Keller Williams Metropolitan, the big difference between those two, well, there are a lot of big differences, but for me, the biggest difference was the mindset piece. I will tell you, this company changed my life tremendously. And I think about that every day. Just positive mindset, that was foreign to me back then. So I had a hard time, I was professional enough, so I did get clients, and I made probably a little more than I made in the rare book business.
Yep.
But I remember I had worked with these buyers for about 2 months, and they were, it was tough for them to find anything. We finally found them a house. They put an offer in, and they called me the next morning and said, you know what, we changed our minds. We're just going to keep renting. And I thought, I just did 2 months of work for zero money.
$0.
And that was it for me.
So that was the end of your first
Go
stint.
around, yeah.
That was the
high note.
that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah. I mean, what's funny is my first transaction was an expired listing, and those people ended up, a few weeks after we closed on their multifamily, they decided to sell their house and buy another one in Bedford. And those were my first clients. They were my first 3 transactions, and I made like $35,000 in commissions. And I thought, this is it. This is how I'm going to get rich.
This is why I got in.
And I went, it became harder from there.
You said that when you came back in it the second time, I'm guessing also the very fact of you leaving and coming back in, you're probably coming from a different perspective in and of itself.
Yep.
You also mentioned the mindset. Tell me more about, because you are a proclaimed introvert.
Self-assessed. Yeah.
Unlike my proclaimed introvert. That's not something I proclaim. Maybe I should. No, but you said that that's what you struggled with real estate.
Yep.
Yet you said it was mindset that changed things when you moved here. What do you think propelled the business itself to kind of get yourself out of the way to allow the business to work for you?
That's a good question. I think part of it was seeing everybody succeeding here. At RE/MAX, nobody talked to each other. If you walked by their door, they would kind of, hunch over and hide their computer from you so you couldn't see what they were doing. And here, everybody was sharing their experiences, sharing advice, letting you do open houses. And I realized, all I have to do is talk to people. And I don't like to talk to people, but if I do it,
It works.
Look what can happen.
Yeah.
You're capable of talking to people.
Yeah.
Apparently so.
Yeah.
So I think that was a big part of it. But I also remember one of the first office meetings I came to, something came up with another agent, and Mark Mulcahy said, if anybody wants to contribute to help out. And I sat there and wrote a $100 check. I didn't have the money, really.
Wow.
But it was just, that ability to give back and share, that just kind of opened up for me when I came to KW. I was not anybody who contributed to charitable causes prior to that, but I certainly have since then. So it was just, again, very life-changing in many respects. So
Just a different perspective on how you saw business in your life, most importantly.
Yeah. I mean, I've always been a very negative person, and KW has helped me change that into, recognizing the positives. So
That's pretty huge. I mean, I learned a term, or somebody used the term last week that I hadn't heard before, but I was like, oh, it makes a lot of sense. There are competitor, right, or competitive industries or businesses, and then there are co-competitor industries and businesses. And when you think about real estate, there are 2 sides to every transaction. There are 2 agents on every side of that, or one agent on each side of that transaction. And I think that's something that's sort of, unique, at least in how Metro sort of operates, is there's a continuous recognition that is the business, right? The process is us communicating with each other. Yes, obviously we handle clients, but a high tide raises all ships mentality is what really exists here. And people are willing to share their knowledge and help one another, which, that you talk about people covering their sheets and grabbing their stuff probably from the printer because they don't want leads to be stolen kind of thing. Yep. If you're in an environment where you're operating from a place of fear and mistrust, how can anything positive grow out of that, right? And I do think it is sort of the complete opposite here, which is unique. Yeah.
Scarcity mindset versus abundance mindset.
Right. Absolutely. Well, and that's where it's very easy because of the amount of money we're dealing with. There are times when there are less deals than other times. It can creep in unless you really work at seeing that we do better if we're working together. Mm-hmm. And that has to be continuously brought in because by nature, there is that competitive side. There's a reason the reason you got into real estate was to be rich. So people would say, well, then make sure that nobody takes your deals.
Yeah.
Like that is something, unless you retrain the way you think of how this business can work. And I think people haven't seen it work by the more you give, the more you receive. Yeah. Once you've experienced that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the giver's gain mentality. Yeah.
It changes things. Mm-hmm. It changes things. So,
and I just want to say one thing. Yes, I've heard that, not that term. I've heard it called co-opetition. Cooperation while competing. And that's something, when I'm talking with a seller and we have the discussion about commission and co-broke fees and they say, why would I pay somebody who is working against my best interests? I say, well, they are representing their buyer client, but we may have to rely on them to steer their client in a direction that we want them to go. And that cooperation is really what makes a transaction successful. So they're on the other side, but they may be on your side without you knowing it. And part of my job is to help them guide their client to get what you want. So
that's a great way to see it.
Yeah.
And we all know that internally. We want to be working with people naturally as human beings. Yet the minute you put a dollar sign, it can easily steer that way unless you have continuous guidance and mindset over the abundance mentality, but then also about treating people fairly and with respect and as human beings. And not that others aren't, but I think you need to be continuously reminded because us as one person can be misguided pretty quickly in this business. So I'm curious, you're a systems guy. You like to do things in a certain way that have brought you success in the past. Is that correct?
Yes, I guess so.
Okay. As someone who doesn't like to talk to people, you said it, so I'm gonna. What have you found as your best source of lead generation?
Two things really kind of propelled me along in the business. So one of them was expired listings, and that may sound like a contradiction. And I know other people share this feeling. I really don't like calling people I know, but I will call people I don't know without much trouble. I get nervous doing it. You can't get around that. But I have no problem calling expired listings and just having a conversation. I'm not trying to be salesy. I'm like, tell me what happened. Why didn't the house sell? I explain what I've done for my past clients, and I've gotten some business that way. So I can overcome my dislike of talking to people if I don't know them.
Well, the stakes are lower.
Yeah.
Right. You don't want to ruin potentially a relationship or a friendship you have with something that you see probably as business, right? Yeah. Aside from personal.
That's a lot of it. The other way I've had a lot of success, and this is how I get around having to talk to people, is because I was an introvert, I didn't have a big group of friends. I didn't have a big social circle. So when I got into the business, I decided to go volunteer at a few places. So I ended up volunteering with what's called CHAMPS, the Central High Association of Music Parents and Supporters. It was parent booster club for the music department at Central High School. I had 2 kids in school there. I thought, I'll show up at the meetings. I'll help with the bake sales.
I know where this goes.
I've told this story many times. And I think the second meeting there, they said, we're electing officers. Do you want to be president? I'm like, I've never been president of anything. But I said yes. And so I was very diligent about that position, tried to, make things better. But I was the one sending emails out to all of these parents over the course of 4 years. Oh. So they always saw my name, and I always, let it be known that I was a real estate agent.
Bingo.
I did not go, hey, do you know anybody who's, thinking
Looking
of buying, selling,
right.
investing? Mm-hmm. But I would tell stories at the meetings. I just had this show, and you should have seen this room. It would be great for a music studio or whatever, And so people saw me doing a good job as president, and they said, okay,
Yes.
we can trust him with real estate. I'm guessing that's what they thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah, trusted association. Yeah.
The other organization I volunteered with was a dog rescue that one of my friends operated. And that was fun, but dogs don't buy and sell real estate.
Love it.
And I realized, well, that was a strategic mistake. So I think I did that for about a year. And then I stopped doing that. I continued to support them financially, but not with my time and effort. But that friend has referred, a number of people to me
Correct.
over the years. So I did make that, I expanded that one connection because I'd already known her. But just volunteering. And when my kids graduated, I ended up volunteering with the Manchester Community Music School. And again, somehow I got sucked into it. I am now the vice chair of the board of directors. I'm the chairman of the marketing and development committee. I don't know how this happens. Mm-hmm. But,
You do a good job.
I guess so.
Yeah.
In this position, though, I'm not the one sending emails out. So I haven't had that much, exposure.
Yep.
But some of the staff and the other board members have referred people to me. So
That's great.
I've started to generate business from that. So it's not me having to talk to people. It's me getting in a position where there are lots of people involved, trying to do a good job. They see that. They know you're in real estate. And so you kind of become the natural go-to.
I love that. I love you using your skill set. And this is a part of why we've wanted to do this podcast, because every real estate business, because you're your own business, does it differently, and that's okay, and that's good. And you haven't pretended to be another agent who loves to call all their best friends and ask them for business, right? And that's good, because I think that's where your success lies. When you try to be someone other than yourself, you're going to hit that brick wall. Yeah. And so I just love the combination of what you love, which is music, art, books, poetry, along with service, right? You came from a place of service, not, hey, how can you serve me? Yeah. But you're giving back, and people are observing that, and they trust you. And trust, I would say, is probably, even if someone doesn't vocalize it, the number one reason they choose an agent.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Trust
Would you say that?
I would agree 100% with that.
So speaking on that, because I want to make sure we talk about this. We want to talk about how you take care of your clients. And I love when I asked you this, you're like, I don't know, I just do it. That's what he said to me. Mm-hmm. I'm like, well,
I said, I don't know what I do. I don't think I do anything.
I don't think I do anything. Actually, that's what he said. I'm like, you wouldn't be in this business if you didn't do anything to take care of your clients. But I think what I would like to find out is, in what way do you care for your clients? What do you see as the most important thing to you in the way you take care of your clients? Either if it's communication, if it's, being very thorough? If it, what is something that people have said about you, afterwards, that said, gosh, you really helped us because of this?
Yeah. I had to think about that, honestly, because my answer was true. I don't think I do anything. But having said that, and having given it some thought, I think communication is key, and it's preemptive communication. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. And if you look at my reviews online, I have them all on my website. Communication is one thing that almost all of them say, great communication. And, he explained throughout the process what was going on. So to me, I want my clients to understand what's coming down the road at them. I have taught this buyer document class, and I really focus on that brokerage relationship disclosure. To me, that is your first opportunity to show that you are a professional, is being able to explain that in detail and explain the implications of all the different agency relationships. So I do take a lot of time, going over that with people at the first meeting, and I send it out in advance so that they can read through it if they want. I also wrote an article about buyer agency, and I always send a link to that before meeting with people, and that goes through, the whole thing as well in more detail. So I want them prepared for that discussion. Do you want to hire me? So that's the first point of communication. And then, during my buyer presentation, if it's with a buyer, I'll explain to them, okay, these are the steps, typical steps in a transaction. Once you're under contract, you have the loan track, and then you have the house track. So you're going to be asked for a bunch more documents. You're going to give them to them 3 times. They're going to ask for them all again. Don't get frustrated.
Yes.
They have reasons why they're asking for them. Just be prepared. We're going to go do inspections. There's always going to be issues. You have to decide what you can tolerate, what you can afford. We'll talk about strategies for how to, soften that for a seller to make your offer more appealing. And, with sellers, I bring market data, anecdotal evidence that we hear on Morning Mindset, et cetera, for what you can expect. And then, once they go under contract, I type up I have a template, but I customize it for each transaction of, okay, now you're under contract. This is what's going to happen next, all the way through closing. I say, you're going to make sure you bring your driver's license. Closings usually take about an hour. Sometimes there can be delays, so you may want to take the whole day off. And, I try and explain every step. At some point, you're going to get a document from the title company asking you for this information. One of the questions is, do you want them to prepare the deed? The answer will be no, because I have someone who can do that for $100, and most title companies will charge you $175 to $250. So I'll save you the price of a nice dinner. Just lay it all out for them in advance. And I say, print this and put it on your refrigerator so you can go back to it.
Yes.
I also lay out all the timelines, because if you look at the purchase and sale agreement, the dates are all over the place.
Yes.
So I put them in order and explain what happens if they miss a deadline, or if the other party misses a deadline, what the options are, et cetera, et cetera. And before a home inspection, Bill has a great script for this, which I have stolen, which is, there are various things that can happen. Either your house is perfect, nothing is going to come up, and we just keep rolling through the transaction.
And pigs will fly.
And that's not likely. Yeah. The other thing that could happen is you could have a bad foundation, roof, furnace, et cetera, and the whole deal falls apart. And that's not likely to happen. More than likely, the buyer is going to find something that they're not necessarily happy with. Maybe it's a safety issue. So they're going to make some requests, and it may cost a little bit of money. So just be prepared. They're not nickel and diming you. They just want to make sure that the home is safe for their family before they move in. And we can deal with all of this. And then, before the closing, I'll talk about the walkthrough. I have it in that under contract email that, start packing now, because it always takes longer than you think. And don't assume the buyer wants anything. You may think that that paint that you just did in your living room, that they're going to want
The
that.
best.
Assume they don't. And, during the inspection, I'll meet with them and ask if there's anything they want to keep. If you want to leave anything behind, we'll double check. But you don't want to leave anything. Don't assume you can leave anything in this house. Yeah. So just kind of prepare them for that. So that's, I guess, how I care for my clients, is preparing them, educating them, so that there aren't any big bad surprises.
Well, I as you were saying that, so much anxiety comes from the unknown.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you are alleviating the unknown.
In advance.
Yeah. You're not fixing all the world's problems.
Right.
You are laying a foundation and taking out that unknown. And by just doing that small, what you feel like is a small piece, just change their whole perspective on the whole transaction.
Well, and it's a bit of savvy self-preservation, because it makes your job easier, right? When
It's
you get to
true.
that speed bump, because now you've insulated them to a degree so that the hit's going to come less hard, and you're not going to have to be as reactionary and probably, dealing with putting the pieces back together.
And I think that shows, first of all, your experience and professionalism, because experience you figured this out the hard way.
Yeah.
When you
Been there.
obviously there's been a few cans of paint that have been left along the way.
How many clients transactions in were you before you said, you know what, I'm going to type all this up and send it to him in advance? How many? What was the?
Yeah, that's a good question. It didn't take me long.
It took me a lot longer to figure it out. I'll just tell you that.
Just because I like to write. One of my
Right.
faults is that all of my emails are really long, and sometimes people don't even read them. Even if you ask me a simple question, I'll give you a long answer. But so I always liked to do that. So I don't think it took me very long before I decided,
That's great.
okay, let's lay this all out for them.
That's great. I would say, and unless you have something else, I want to ask you, for a new agent, what would be your the one thing you would advise them to do or not do?
Let me just add an element to that. For a new agent who considers themselves an introvert, because this is kind of a unique case scenario with you, but the whole reason we're doing this podcast is not just for a resource for current agents, but also for people who are even just considering the possibility of real estate. Gotcha. And I know there are plenty of people out there who go, I can't do real estate, I'm an introvert, right? So if you were to be speaking to a crowd of those folks similar to yourself, what would you say to that?
That is an excellent question.
Sorry I didn't give that one to you before, obviously. We want you to do it on the fly.
There are groups for introverts in real estate. There's a Facebook group for them. But I would
Support
say,
groups.
I would say just understand yourself, and the phrase is find your tribe. You have interests that are shared by other people, and if you can tap into that and connect with those people are the least likely to go find that top producer who's driving the Ferrari around. They want to connect with somebody like them as well. And once you get that sort of core base of past clients, then you can start getting referrals from it. Word will spread fast. So just believe in who you are and find other people along those lines.
Thank you for saying yes to jumping on. Sure. It wasn't too scary, was it?
No.
That's good. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle at KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
Behind the sign.